Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Is this loud enough? Okay, it's a little low. We can turn it up a little bit. Thank you. Good morning. And happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers in our midst and all who mother in our midst, which, spoiler alert, is all of us. So you don't have to be a woman or a mother to mother others. So happy Mother's Day to all of us. Whether you're here in the meeting house or joining us on Zoom, thank you for being here today for this beautiful, glorious, sunshiny day, for choosing to come to worship and not just worship outdoors. I'm grateful for all of you for being here. Just a few announcements before we light our chalice. So first up, next Sunday is our deadline to bring in clothing donations for the refugees at the Baymont Hotel. As you may remember, we're collecting spring and summer clothing, all ages, all genders, but no shoes, just clothing for the folks who are living at the Baymont Hotel down the road. So if you can bring everything in by next Sunday, is that right, Donna? Next Sunday, Donna Eldridge is coordinating this effort. So if you have any questions about what to bring, talk to her, but there are bins in the Beal House in front of the fireplace. So separate them by gender and adult and child. So there's 4 bins. Look at coffee hour and you'll see what I'm talking about. But next Sunday is the deadline. And also just another heads up, there's not gonna be any food at coffee hour today because nobody signed up to host coffee hour today. I mean, it is Mother's Day. We are a smaller crowd, but Russ Garland, God bless him, is made a pot of coffee for us. But there won't be any food, but there are opportunities still to host coffee hour this year. So have no fear. If you have a burning desire to sign up to host coffee hour and you just have not managed to do it yet, there are 3 dates that are still open. And those are May 28th, June 4th, oh wait, I wrote it down, June 4th and June 18th. So next Sunday for our annual meeting, the RE program is gonna be doing a baked potato bar for us during the annual meeting, and then on June 11th, we're gonna have RE Sunday outside on the Beal lawn, followed by our parish picnic. So May 28th, June 4th, and June 18th are open. You can talk to Sue or Christina if you have questions about what it means to host coffee hour, and we hope you'll do so. And I've already touched on that next Sunday is our annual meeting. The warrant's posted on the door. It's been emailed to you. If you have questions, talk to any member of the governing board that's present today. I see Heather, and I see Bob, and I see Bud. Oh, you're all in a row. What's that about? Anyways, if you have any questions about what's on the warrant, but we hope you'll join us for that very important meeting. Okay, done with the announcements. I invite you all to join me in taking a deep breath in and out. Let your mind clear, relax your shoulders. If you have any tension in your jaw or your face, just try to let it go. Take another deep breath in and out. All the worries on your mind will be there when the service is over. So if you can, just put them down for a little while and be present with us in this worship space this morning. Linda Loring is our worship associate, and she will lead us in lighting our chalice.
Good morning. My name is Linda Loring, and I'm your worship associate this morning. I am a member, the co-chair of the Social Justice Committee, and a member here who's on her own spiritual journey, joining my wonderful church family wherever they are on their spiritual journeys. And also a quest for lifelong learning, that this church does so much for me in that way as well. Lots of opportunities to learn new things. So you are all very welcome here to First Parish, wherever you are on your spiritual journey. This morning we light our chalice with these words by Claudine Oliva. We light this chalice for mothers and mothering, to celebrate those who have taken on the task of nurturing a young one, baby, child, or youth, into adulthood, to celebrate those who have nourished the light of truth and compassion in growing minds and hearts, to celebrate those who have committed time, money, energy to the growth of others in this world. We light this chalice to celebrate and hold dear this flame of love. Okay, I invite you now to rise in body or in spirit for our opening hymn, number 91, Mother of All.
Now is the time in our service where we take time to share the joys and concerns on our hearts with those of us present. And to begin, I invite you to first join me in singing side 1 of May Love Be Your Guide. Friends, will you join me in prayer? Spirit of life and love, of mothers and mothering everywhere, hear the prayers and meditations on our hearts this morning. May we hold the sorrows of this community, not to fix, but to witness, not to remedy, but to hold. May we also lift up the celebrations among us, the happy news and joyful moments that lift all of our hearts. On this Mother's Day, may we offer thanks for all the mothers in our lives, those who have tended our busted knees or our broken hearts, those who nurture us, who give us the hard advice we don't want to hear, those who help us stand up for ourselves and pursue the true desires of our hearts, those who love us in all our brokenness, our silliness, our anger, or our need. We are grateful for the many who have mothered to us in our lives. And in the words of Unitarian Julia Ward Howe, author of the Mother's Day Proclamation, quote, "From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, disarm. The sword is not the balance of justice. Let all women meet to bewail and commemorate the dead. Let them then solemnly take counsel with each other as to the means whereby the great human family can live in peace, each learning after their own time the sacred impress not of Caesar, but of God. In honoring her words, and in the name of the love that surpasses all understanding, we do pray this morning. Amen. Let us now be still for a few moments together. Please join me in singing side 2 of May Love Be Your Guide. May you walk with head held high. May your heart praise earth and sky. May you see life's gift to you. May love be your guide, your guide. Amen. May love be your guide.
When we give, we say yes to something we value. In this congregation, we take up the offering each week to say yes to the values of our UU faith and yes to this beloved community. Please give as you are able. Today's offering will be gratefully received. Our offering anthem is the 23rd Psalm, Dedicated to My Mother, by Bobby McFerrin.
She makes me
Yeah, what I have here for the reading this morning, just a little background on how I arrived at writing this. this It's a shout out for Soul Matters. I just love that group. And a couple of years ago, in February actually of 2021, the theme for the month was imagination. And one of the options was to take a poem that you really liked and to kind of redo it by crossing off every other line and inserting your own words. And I said, gee, I don't know, for some reason, not having written a poem since 5th grade, this would be a challenge. And for some reason, I was up for it. And there was also a very good reason, because a poem had really, really been resting in my heart ever since I heard it. And it was Amanda Gorman's The Hill We Climb, her inauguration poem that she read. And of course, she did such a wonderful job with it. And the message was so strong. And the message resonated with where I was, because I was beginning to become more and more involved in advocating for gun safety with a couple of groups. And so this is what came out of this. The every other line eventually went to step 2, which was to cross out the other lines and insert your own. So this is what I have, and it's called Silence is Violence. Each day we wake up asking, when will this gun violence end? The deaths we suffer, more than 100 lives per day. We've called for change because we've learned that silence is violence. The ideas and opinions of what gun rights are don't always make sense, but the time has come. We have organized and found that change is not impossible when the motives are sound. We, the fighters for gun sense, in a time when moms and grandparents and students who have found their voices can dream of making a difference, can gain the attention of the world. Willing volunteers, determined to lessen the violence by spreading the word that we are not aiming to rid the country of all guns. We are striving to create a nation committed to the safety of all lives. And so we focus not on our differences, but we imagine meeting on a common ground. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must put ourselves in another's shoes. We stop arguing so we can listen thoughtfully to one another. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. This is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare. We seek gun ownership with responsibility despite powerful opposition. That even as gun deaths rise, we continue. That even with failure, we persevere. We have split over the Second Amendment, forcing the rise of us against them. But while preventing gun tragedies can be opposed, we will not be disheartened. This is the era of more guns than people and more mass shootings than days in the year. Statistics do not lie. In these we trust as we seek to lower the death rate. History has its eyes on us. This is the time for optimism. So while once we asked, how can we overcome the power of the NRA? Now we answer. Our strength in numbers will save the day. We will not be discouraged or interrupted by intimidation because we know our complacency will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our inaction becomes their hardship. But one thing is certain, if we merge listening with speaking, the common ground becomes our legacy. So let our work yield a result that will put our kids' futures, that will change our kids' futures. Every ounce of energy we have, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. And every state in our nation will have gun sense legislation. From every region of our country, activists of all ages and colors will appear, ready and willing and without fear, to suit up and show up. Because it's not about right or left. It's about life or death. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. And a thank you to Amanda Gorman. You'll recognize some of her lines.
Thank you, Linda. When I decided on the topic for our service today, one of the very first things I did was reach out to her and ask her to partner with me in planning, knowing that this is a cause that is near and dear to her heart, as it is to so many of us. So 1 second while I get myself situated. Okay. Good morning again, everyone, and a happy Mother's Day to all. Today is a day of flowers and cards. How many people are going to brunch afterwards or something like that? Or maybe some of us are at brunch right now, which is okay. But it's about offering thanks for our mothers, for all who have mothered us, friends, sisters, aunts, teachers. So many of us are mothers and are mothered, and what a gift it is to be able to receive and give the blessing of mothering. And it is also, for many, a sad day. It's a day to miss our mothers if we've lost them. It's a day for mothers who miss their children, separated by death, divorce, estrangement, or something else. Today can be hard for some people to hold. So wherever you are on the spectrum of celebrating Mother's Day or maybe dreading Mother's Day, I want you to know that we see you and we hold you in this space this morning. Today, there are many mothers who are grieving the loss of their children to gun violence. I know this is a heavy topic, and some of you may be asking yourselves right now, why would she choose to talk about something so heavy on Mother's Day? But if I'm being really honest with all of you, I can't not talk about it. I can't not talk about it. This epidemic is a tragedy for our nation, and it tears my heart open every single time I read about another mass shooting. There have been more this year so far than there have been days in the year. I'm full of grief and anguish about it, and church is a place where you can lay down your grief and your sorrow. Church is where we help each other deal with the hard stuff, and this is probably the hardest of hard stuff that we've had to deal with. I've been carrying around so much fear and anger and sorrow about the gun violence epidemic in our nation, and I needed to name it, and I wanted to lay it down, and I wanted to lay it down here with all of you. Because I know I'm not alone. I know you're all angry. I know you're all afraid. I know you're upset, and maybe you feel helpless. So I wanted you to know that you're not alone in all of those feelings. When I was in college, my cousin Brooks died by suicide. It was a devastating shock to our family that I firmly believe we've never really recovered from. And 5 years later, my cousin, Trey, also died by suicide. Both of them used guns that were in the home. I don't know how their mothers, my aunts, carried that loss, because we didn't talk about it. We never really talked about it because it felt too painful to address, too painful to bring up. We didn't want to hurt them by asking them how they were doing. And you know what? If I'm honest, I regret that now. I really do, because I can't imagine the suffering and the grief that they had to carry by themselves, because no one wanted to upset them to talk about it. And how weeks and months and now years later, they're probably still carrying it. like so many mothers, fathers, siblings, cousins who are today mourning the same kind of loss. Our country is in the midst of a mental health crisis. That's not news, I know. And we are not so very different from other countries, high-income countries like us in that regard. But for too many Americans, we deal with our mental health crises by picking up a gun. And it's unfathomable to me how things could be this bad. I can't believe that our government hasn't found a way to stop it, that the amount of rage I feel is almost indescribable, that our politicians are so corrupted by money and fear and power that they will prioritize the rights of gun owners over the lives of children. I just can't believe it. It's usually at this point of my thinking that I start to pull back. I take a deep breath and I find something to distract me from all the feelings that are bubbling up. And you might be thinking, well, sure, that's healthy. You can't just sit in all that, especially when you can't do anything about it. It's not good. It's not good for your mental health to think about these things. But lately, I've been trying to take a little bit of a different tack when these feelings bubble up, which they do with alarming frequency. And today, I want to talk a little bit about the power and the practice of lament and how it might help me and all of us in those moments where we feel helpless and sad and angry. When I was in seminary, I took a class on spiritual practices. I loved this class. In each class, we focused on a different type of spiritual practice, different kinds of prayer, meditation, movement, and study. We learned a whole bunch of ways to center ourselves, to connect with the God of our understanding, to learn how to hear that still small voice that I talk about a lot inside of us. So surprisingly, one of the spiritual practices we studied was lament, because yes, lament is a spiritual practice, and one that I admittedly have a lot to learn about, I'll put it that way, because lament involves facing your feelings, feeling your feelings. Lament means allowing in all of that stuff that we try so hard to keep at bay, letting those emotions wash over us and through us as a means of processing and healing and learning. One of the things my teacher kept saying to us during our lament section of the course was, you have to feel it if you want to heal it. Nothing like good advice that rhymes. So one of the texts we studied as we learned about lament is from the book of Jeremiah in chapter 31, verse 15, which talks about Rachel, who is crying for her children who have been taken captive into slavery. And the passage reads, quote, "A voice is heard in Ramah, mourning and great weeping. Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because they are no more." So many of the mothers in our country today are lamenting like Rachel. And they are refusing to be comforted because their grief is too big for words to heal. And their grief needs a voice. It needs to be expressed, and it needs to be heard. Because the cry of lament is a cry against injustice. The cry of lament is a cry of anger. So many of the Psalms in the Bible are Psalms of lament. People who have suffered loss, people who can't find God, people who have been oppressed and tormented, reaching out and begging, pleading for help, for relief, for grace. And I think we could take a page from the Bible and learn about the practice of lament. Because lament creates a sacred space around our grief and our suffering. Lament says no to pushing the pain aside. It says no to the culture that says, let's not talk about that. It's just too hard. Lament is a direct rebuttal to the idea that we are not strong enough to feel our pain. That's an important sentence, so I'm going to repeat it. Lament is a direct rebuttal to the idea that we are not strong enough to feel our own pain, because we are strong enough. We have a resilience in us that only sometimes grief and pain can reveal. How many of you have survived a hard loss and you don't have to raise your hands, but thank you, have survived a hard loss and learned something about yourself? That doesn't mean it was a good thing that happened, but you were able to move through it and become a different person, to live into yourself in a different way because of that loss. That is what lament can help us do. We can survive so much even though we don't think we can. Because lament allows our hearts to break open. And it takes courage to do that. It takes courage to allow yourself to feel this stuff, right? I'm not saying all this like it's easy. I know it's hard. But again, you have to feel it. Say it with me. If you want to heal it. Oh, good job. So now that I've made a bit of a case for lament, how do we do it, right? That might be what you're thinking. What do we do? What does lament actually look like? And I'm going to say that it's pretty simple, and I'm going to guess that some of you already do it some of the time. So whenever those hard feelings bubble up, and you want to cry, or you want to scream, or you want to break something safely without hurting other people, cry, scream, break something safely without hurting other people. That's what lament is. Lament gives voice to our emotions. It gives voice to that anger and voice to that grief. And to do that, you have to surrender to those feelings. You have to let them out. You have to soften that release valve and let the steam out. That's what lament is. You have to touch those emotions that are really hard to feel. Acknowledging the grief, the despair, the righteous anger, and the helplessness. The helplessness is a big part of this. You have to let yourself feel that too. Have you ever had to sit down and just have a good cry? Anybody ever done that? Just sat down and had a good cry? Did you feel better afterwards? Did the problem get solved? Did it go away? No, but did you feel better? Just a little bit because you let it go? That's lament. That's what I mean by saying you're already doing lament. Have you ever called up a friend and be like, can you just listen because I just need to vent for like 5 minutes? I do that a lot. Not about you guys, but about other things. That's lament too. That's lament. So that's what I mean when you're already doing it. You just have to lean in and let yourself do it more. Because I've never done one of those things and not felt better afterwards. The problem didn't go away, but I felt lighter. My heart felt freer. And that's what lament does for us. Because we're all carrying around so much heaviness right now because of the state of our world. And lament helps free us from the burden of a lot of that negative emotion. So I have a good example, a really good example about this. After the last president, whose name I will not say, got elected, I went to a local park where I was living. I was living in New Haven at the time. So there's a park called East Rock, which has this big, huge cliff face, and you can climb or drive up to the top of it. And when you get up there, you can see all of New Haven. You can see the Long Island Sound. It's really, really beautiful. There's a big statue up there and stuff. It's a great place for a picnic. It's a great place to go for a walk when you're procrastinating from writing papers and that sort of thing. So, but after Election Day, I got a group of friends, and we went up to the top of East Rock together, and we stood on the ledge. There's a barrier, so it's safe, but we stood on the ledge overlooking the city, and we screamed at the top of our lungs. I swear this is so true. We screamed about all of our anger that he got elected. We screamed out all of the fear that was going to happen to us and the people that we loved. We screamed about what was going to happen to our democracy. We screamed about what was going to happen to our environment. We screamed out all of our loathing of his misogyny, his narcissism, his cruelty. We just screamed and screamed and screamed and screamed at the top of our lungs. And we got some funny looks. And did it solve the problem? Obviously not. You know what happened. But did I feel a hell of a lot lighter afterwards? Yes, I did. I did. It allowed me to breathe without bursting into tears for the first time in a few days. Because lament is the doorway to healing. That's the whole point of this practice. You have to go through it to get to the other side. If you broke your leg, would you say, oh no, I can't possibly feel that pain. I'm just going to ignore it until it goes away. Would you do that? No, of course not. You'd go to the hospital, you'd go to the doctor, you'd take care of it. The same is true with our emotions. Ignoring the pain does not make it go away. It will stay, it will fester, and your wounds will never become scars. They will stay wounds. They won't heal if you think ignoring them makes them go away. The late, great Leonard Cohen wrote amazing lyrics. I'm not admittedly such a fan of his music, but his lyrics I absolutely love. And his song Anthem is probably his best known song for these lyrics that I'm going to give you right now, where he sings, ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything, and that is how the light gets in. Does anyone know that song? Yeah. There is a crack in everything. That is how the light gets in. Lament is what cracks us open. so the light can get in. Because a broken heart is an open heart. And so often, letting ourselves feel our sadness, our grief, our anger is what helps us realize what matters to us. It helps us recognize our connections to each other, to our interdependent web, and it helps us connect with that overwhelming force of love that just waits to guide us in our lives and help us find meaning and purpose. And it can be a powerful channel for justice. Che Guevara, and this is true, if where I read it is true, I hope it is, the Argentinian revolutionary once said this, quote, "At the risk of seeming ridiculous, let me say that the true revolutionary is guided by feelings of great love." I don't think that's ridiculous at all, but I guess he was a man, so, But at the risk of seeming ridiculous, let me say that the true revolutionary is guided by a great feeling of love. The story of gun violence victims and their families in America is a story of grief and lament. And some are letting their broken hearts lead to change, guided by love for their children and all other children, love for their families and their communities, and a strong desire to protect them. And for so many of the mothers who have lost their children, their lament has fueled efforts of resistance, protest, and change in this country. They did not let their losses destroy them. Instead, they were propelled toward justice. And I want to illuminate that with a little treat for you all today. I found a video in doing my research for this sermon that I want to share with you, because I knew this was going to be a hard topic, and I wanted to find a moment of uplift to bring us out of it. So I found a video that I'm going to play for you. It's called "The Flower." It was originally recorded in 2018 by the musician and activist Michael Franti to be, quote, "an anthem for the movement to end gun violence in our nation." And it says everything that I'm trying to say to you about the power of lament to produce change. So, there's an insert in your order of service today that has some links, some places where you can learn and read more. I hope you will do that and educate yourselves on ways that we can help. And as we finally bring this service to a close, I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join me for our closing hymn, "How Could Anyone?" It's 1053 in the teal hymnal, and we will sing it through twice. Friends, as we extinguish our chalice, we bring the light and the warmth of this community with us out into a world that is sorely in need of healing. So we do this work together. Go in peace until we are together again. Amen.